Guys, so today we are going to discuss about ES6 classes in JavaScript. So for the people who don't know about me, I am Jayatu Amarasinghe, currently working in Cube project as a senior software engineer. Please follow me on Instagram. So today we are discussing about ES6 classes. So when you go into ES6 classes, in previous versions in JavaScript, how we going to handle classes? So in ES5 way of declaring classes is there. So before going to that, so JavaScript is not a pure object-oriented programming language. It's like object-driven programming language. So we can't say this is a class. So this is a way of representing a class in JavaScript. So here, uh, so you can see height and width. So we can take it as a constructional parameters, and this is something kind of we are doing inside the constructor. We are assigning those values into our properties inside the classes. So this is something kind of how to add a function to a class. So for that we are using prototype. So actually I think you guys have some knowledge about prototype and kind of thing. So and after that we are going to new the function and get an object. This is how we are going to declare a class in ES5 JavaScript. So then after we can access the methods inside the prototype. So this is something kind of fast JavaScript. So now
Before going to that, we are going to cover in detail about all the
prototypes.
things related to prototype and how all you can declare class like syntax with this approach and how all you can access and manipulate things. So don't get confused. I mean, if you don't understand this directly, don't worry. We will explain in detail about all the things. Why we took this topic before prototype is because uh, I think you all are familiar with classes, and then you will get a foundation idea, a brief idea about how all things are represented with class like syntax in JavaScript. And then we will move on to prototype and explain you all the misconceptions and how this whole concept maps into JavaScript.
Okay, then we are. So actually, what is ES6 class? Actually, as described here, it's not coming from the like in language something kind of this is something kind of a synthetic sugar over prototype and the functions that we can use classes very nice and very clear, and using syntax we can create class and methods and static variables and all the things related to classes. So but underground implementation of classes, actually they are using prototypes mechanisms to implement classes, but in ES6 they are providing some much easier ways with some keywords to work with classes related stuff.
So, if I explain further on what synthetic sugar is, basically now we have language level details on how you can do a certain thing. Think about this in broad. So, say you have some kind of language, say Java. In Java, if there is a particular feature which is already available, or in any language, if there is a particular feature which is already available and people might be using it, and on top of that, if we want to provide a certain feature which uses the underlying concepts of the current approach. Say for an example, this a simple implementation of a data structure or something where which is currently available if you implement it manually. Otherwise, certain data structures and certain interfaces are exposed out of the box from the language to you, so that you can easily reuse them or easily use them. So they have like in this case, what JavaScript has done is JS has a way of defining classes. Uh, it's not actually classes. We will go into that detail later on in this session. But whatever the approach currently, what we have to use to declare classes is a bit messy. You have to write a lot of code. You have to really understand JavaScript to like use that particular syntax. And there are a whole lot of gotchas. You have to really understand, otherwise it will be really complex when you try to do certain object-oriented things like extending a class and so on and so forth. So this particular syntax, which we are going to discuss, which was released after ES6, is kind of like a wrapper API, which provides a nicer syntax, but underlyingly, we are still doing the same thing. So prototypes and whatever the approach which is used by JavaScript is still there. It doesn't go away anywhere. So you have to really understand prototypes if you want to go into detail and do certain things. And this is just syntax. It wraps around all the complexities and give you a nice clean API, which is really simple.
Right. So this is how we are going to declare a class in ES6 way. So actually you have to use the class keyword to declare a class. This is the class name, and obviously we have a constructor, and we can use methods inside this. So same like Java, you have to new the class and pass the constructor parameters, and you can get an object. So by using that object, you can access the methods and the methods inside the class. So this is how we are declaring a class in ES6 way. So actually simply this function will print the console log with height and width.
And constructor is a special keyword within class. So in class syntax, you can't use constructor as a method name. Constructor is the place which gets invoked when you new up a class. So when you say new rectangle, constructor code will get invoked first, and afterwards whatever the methods you are calling or whatever the operation you are doing, that will get initiated. So this, you can relate this to any other language, object-oriented language.
Right. So this is some kind of a comparison in ES5 way of implementing class and actual ES6 using ES6 class keyword and how to implement a class. So you can see that we expressed in the first slide about ES6 classes. So it's something kind of very easy API that you can create classes and methods like we are doing in Java. But in ES5 and the prototype way, it's much complex. You have better understanding about JavaScript to do that. So, but in ES6, it will more easier to create classes by using that API. So this is something kind of a comparison. This is another way we can create classes. We are calling it class expressions in like functions. Actually, in the function sessions, you saw that. So we can declare functions like expressions, so we can like name functions. So same like that. Actually, we can create classes like expressions. So this is also we can actually create an object and we can use the methods inside the.
So none of you have any concerns about why we have two ways of declaring classes. So is there a use actually? Didn't it cross your mind like when you see, okay, we can do the same thing with both the approaches? So any idea why we have two syntax, and like is there a value or they just have added some kind of a duplicate syntax just to do the same thing? Is that the case? Okay.
Answer, right?
Yeah, so answer is there on the screen.
Yeah, did you cover hoisting in any of our sessions?
Yeah. We initially covered. It was the third session. Nobody knows. So that itself is not the only answer. So there are other reasons we will discuss later in the session. Why actually we need both the syntax, because like if it is only hoisting, then again like yeah, it is concerning like whether it's getting hoisted and how well you can use it. But then again, there is one more really cool feature with this particular syntax, so we will discuss later.
So another question. So you mentioned that it's a synthetic sugar kind of implementation on top of the existing prototype implementation, right?
Yeah.
So does that mean that when the JavaScript get executed, does it actually transpile to ES5 before executing, or
Not actually. So
can it actually go through the class implementation line by line, similar to how the interpreter goes through the ES5 implementation?
in browser, if you open up the dev console, you will see class syntax. That you won't see it as a prototype and all those things, but underlyingly, whatever the representation in JavaScript engine, the way they have it, they were like representing prototype and all the way of declaring classes is the same approach which they are using underlyingly. So nothing changes there. JavaScript engine uses the same thing, but you will get this synthetic sugar where you can write code in this particular syntax, and you can do certain things like you can access the prototype of a class as well. So we will cover that as well later on. We won't be able to do that if this is something brand new. So that is why I'm saying with class syntax you can do certain things, but when you want to do something really complex, it gets harder. Say reflection. Like reflection is one of the greatest features in JavaScript, right? Like if you have worked with JavaScript, if you have used a library, like I'm definitely sure you might have come across places where you have to add new functionality to a particular existing library, or you want to change some kind of a functionality just to fix a bug or something in whatever the library. Then in that case, what we normally used to do was simply override the prototype method with whatever the bug fixed version in your code. So you could do this easily with JavaScript, but in other languages like Java or any other, it's really hard, right? If you want to do something like that, you have to write a lot of code, and it's fragile. But in JavaScript, that is one of the greatest features, and everybody uses such features. Even native classes like arrays and whatever the strings which language exposes, people extend them all the time. People add new features. So likewise, you can do the same thing with classes as well, but in certain cases, you can't go up to that extent without using prototype. So there are various cases when you look into this in practical sense, and classes are really nice. Yeah, you can use it, but make sure that you understand prototype and you know for sure what is happening underneath before using this.
Right?
Yeah, you can go ahead with the
Hope
hoisting.
we might get the answer.
Yeah.
All right. So hoisting. Actually, I think you guys all know about what is hoisting in JavaScript. So I can remember in functions and in object we talk about hoisting, right?
Yeah.
So anyone can guess the answers for these things.
Answer is there on the screen.
Yeah, actually, answer is there.
Okay, no worries. You can.
Yeah. Uh, so the important thing in related to class hoisting, none of these are not going to hoist. Not like functions. The first one is actually class declarations. It is not going to hoisting. So that's why it's going to output a reference error. The second one, it's an expression class. It's not also going to hoist it. That's why the output 2 also giving a reference error. So keep in mind, so without or without strict in JavaScript, if you're using those things and in your mind you are thinking like it's going to hoist, it's not going to hoist. Classes are not going to hoist in any way. All right. All right. So in ES6 classes, we can see the constructor as a keyword. We can use it. So actually, it's a special method like in Java constructor. But the main difference is uh, we can't use more constructors inside the class. Actually, we can use only one constructor inside the class. If you are using two constructors or more, it will give a syntax error in JavaScript ES6 classes. Uh, Actually, we explained earlier slides also. So this is a class. Uh, Inside the class, we can have properties like height and width. Using constructor parameters, we can assign the values or not, right? So as well as we can have the methods inside the class. We can define any number of methods inside the class, and after creating objects, we can use the methods inside that.
Yeah, and now you might wonder, okay, JavaScript, like people who implement the spec of JavaScript, they might be crazy, right? Why not have private height, private width, like in other languages? If they went all the way just to implement this class syntax, why not they didn't do that? Have the syntax like in all the other languages? Can you guess? Like any ideas? Why not? Okay, so I gave you all the answer. It's because they wanted to keep the same approaches, same behaviors which are available in prototype, and JavaScript is an object-driven language, not an object-oriented language. So in that case, they can do certain things, but they can't do certain things. So like if you think about this particular syntax, this dot height, this dot width, they can't have property declarations here because the way JavaScript works is now in this particular case, whenever you use the new keyword in front of a class or in front of a function, like I don't know whether you recall, I told in one of the earlier sessions, whenever you use new keyword in front of a function or in front of a class, it will, in this case, it will call the constructor function, which is kind of like a normal function. But in this case, whenever you have a class, that is a special function which will get invoked when you call new in front. And there, in the first line, what happens is before even starting to execute this first line, it will create a brand new object. and to that brand new object it will assign height property and assign the value of height, and secondly it will assign width property and create a width property in that object and assign the width value. So it will create an object and assign these two values, and afterwards it will return that particular object to you, which is stored in React, this particular variable. So that is the same thing what's happening in prototype. When you use functions to declare classes, where when you use new keyword in front, it will create an object and assign all these things, and then return you the object which has like all the data, and then you can use prototype methods on top. So as they wanted to keep things consistent, they didn't break anything. They made it interoperable. This is just nice syntax, but nothing more. You can do all these things with prototype.
Right. Uh, but using classes, actually in Java and .NET we can use static functions. Same like here, we can declare static methods inside the class. So just what you have to do is use the static keyword and the function name. So anyone can guess the two outputs from this code snippet.
This is the simplest question. So
Yeah,
Both should be the same.
both should be the same. Same like
because it's JavaScript.
because it's JavaScript.
Yeah.
All right. So any other answers? Should be same. All right. Asan,
If it works like the other languages, then it should be.
what? The same? Other languages?
Yeah,
If it's like Java, it shouldn't even work. But if it's like JavaScript,
in Java, if you have the method declared as static, then you can just call it without creating it.
All right. And the second out, the rect.get name,
Yeah, the same method is getting called. So same one.
but we are creating object here.
Yeah, but still the same method.
All right. Okay. First output, this is a static method. It will give the console log. But the second one, like Java, or any other object-oriented language, it will give the type error. So this is how they created the static methods in class in ES6.
And there is no such thing called static properties.
Yeah.
That is one thing you have to understand, because the way you create a property is in constructor level, where you simply say this dot whatever the property name and you assign the value to it, and that is how you
So
declare.
actually, this is how we can't create a property by using static keyword. So this is how we are going to create static properties. First, we are creating the class, and then we are assigning a property, and this is how we are. Actually, Johan said like if you use classes, if you are using classes, but the background it will run as prototype and object like in the earlier methods. So then again we have the access to the prototype and the object of the class. So but using that we can create static properties like this. All right. Same like in the other object-oriented classes, we have getter and setters in ES6 classes by using get and set keywords. So pretty obvious. What is the output from this? 10, 25. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. 10, 25. All right. This is actually Johan said like we don't have private and public, but in near future, actually now it's have, but this is very new in classes, but in near future, but I think Chrome and Node.js, they are still not using this, but in the very latest version in JavaScript, we can declare private methods, the private properties by using these syntaxes.
So what they are trying to do is now these private properties you won't be able to access once you create a instance,
Create
right?
instance,
So
yeah.
that is the normal behavior, right? So in this case, what they are trying to do is they are trying to mask it in a certain manner where it will be hidden from the prototype. So within the spec, like once this is released, we have to read how this all relate to prototype and how we can deal with this in prototypes as well. So this is really not new. I don't think you can
Don't
use
use
it right
Don't
now.
use it, not working.
So once this is stable and all the browsers, all the major browsers support it, we can discuss in detail on like how to use it and what are the pros and cons. Right now, like, just remember that there is a way and it's coming.
Alright, if you are using classes, inheritance is a must. So it's a main objective of using classes. So, but in JavaScript, we can use it by using the extend keyword. Uh, yeah. So same like in Java or .NET, uh, by using the super keyword, we can call the constructor of the super classes and the super methods. So they are providing that super keywords also by using the ES6 classes. Alright, so anyone can guess the answer for d.speak? Any guesses?
I said two, right?
Yeah.
Door makes a noise. And door barks.
Alright, thank you very much. It's correct. Same like any other languages, so it will work like this. So, Johan, shall we move to that bubble and show the.
Yeah, that's.
So this is the code we are using to using for inheritance in ES6 classes. So this is actually the ES6 way of defining classes and inheritance. So this is the early way of defining inheritance and how to create classes in JavaScript. So but I want you to show that because if you are using the all JavaScript API, so it's like very complex. Even we can't understand what is this. We have to deeper knowledge about JavaScript to understand about the inheritance and the prototype methods and the class behavior of early JavaScript APIs. So, but using that synthetic sugar and kind of API, so it's very easy to defining classes and inheritance by using JavaScript.
Yeah, and I will let some more things to it. If I tell you in simple terms, this is the lamer way of declaring classes, and this is the pro way of doing things. So, with the easy way, always there are issues, right? So, there are a whole lot of issues. When you use classes, consider all the pointers we are going to mention in this session and get a deeper understanding of how it works before using it. And previous syntax, yeah, it is complex, I agree. But JavaScript is not a language which is intended for you to do object-oriented things like extending and all sorts of things. Yeah, you can do that with a different approach, which is prototype chain. Without understanding prototype chain, if you try to just adapt all the things you know from Java or C Sharp or whatever the language and think of this particular language as such language and try to do all the things which you are doing in certain languages, certain other languages, you might come to a point where you will not be able to figure out how to solve this problem. And there is a really simple way to solve this problem rather than creating all these classes and whatnot. So what I have seen is now newcomers, whoever uh, start like implementing JavaScript, I don't know, front end applications or back end applications, what they all do is they see this nice syntax. They say, oh yeah, nice. We have classes. I don't have to worry about prototype. I don't have to learn any of it. I can do everything with classes. And what they do is they just like say there is a use case where you just want to call a function and get a value and like you are good with it. In that case also, certain people just go ahead and create a class and add that method to that class and create an instance just to call that method. You are going to call it only once, but then again you are going to create an instance and do all sorts of things underlyingly in the JS engine just because you want to emulate everything, address all the problems in object-oriented manner. But keep in mind, this is not object-oriented language, and you can emulate certain things. There are like different patterns to address all these things rather than going ahead with classes. So in that case, just use a PO function. Don't go ahead and create a class unless you want to create multiple instances and you want to use all those methods without duplicating and without creating all those in the memory again and again when you create instances. So keep in mind, like always think whether or not to use this before using. This is something which you have to use if you really want it, otherwise just leave it aside. I used to do the same mistake. I used to create all those things that way and I learned it in the hard way. So you will come across a whole lot of issues. Then you will figure out, okay, the only optimization is to go back, understand JS, like how this whole language works. Okay, functional programming is the best way. And you have to mix and match like all these concepts. You can adapt certain things from object-oriented languages and whatever the patterns which are available, and you can adapt all the functional aspects of it as well. And you have to utilize the language in a manner where you can get the best benefit out of it. So that is what you have to do rather than like trying to reach all these problems like you have a hammer and you try to solve all those problems with that hammer. So try to think about that aspect as well.
All right. Any idea of the keyword instance of? I think Java also has instance of, right? So, Asanga, can you guess the answers? Instance of.
In this case, what will happen is in Java you have instance of, right? If you call instance of on a particular class and super class and so on a child class object, what will happen?
Still it gives the true, right?
Okay, in all in the inheritance hierarchy.
If you are asking me like there is a parent class,
Yeah.
there is a child class.
Yeah.
If you are asking whether the child class is an instance of parent class, the object of the child class is
Yeah.
an instance of parent class. So since there is the hierarchy extent keyword, then it will say true.
Okay.
Can you guess what will happen in JavaScript? Alright. So
yeah,
it's also the same.
It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, straightforward. It's also the same. It's giving the true. So same like in Java instance of JavaScript also same working same like that. All right. there's another topic called mixins.
And before going to that, let me detail out one thing I forgot about super. Now you will think that okay, super is nice. This syntax is really cool. I can simply call super speak and it will work fine. Yeah, it will work fine. But like you have to understand how it works. When you say extend and when you call a super method, what happens underneath is if you are not using a library or if you are not using a preprocessor just to pre-process this say down to ES5 or somewhat, if you are using native JavaScript in JavaScript engines within browser, then what it does is whenever you call super whatever the method, it creates a copy of speak method inside dog class with a different name or some kind of a placeholder, and it calls the copy of that method. It doesn't actually call the method of speak class which is extended. This is because of performance reasons. What they call technically is they will do this not in runtime, in compile time. JavaScript itself is compiled in the browser itself. When you give a JavaScript file, it will first of all go through all the lines and compile and create a compiled output, which is not binary code or something, but it has a intermediate representation, and afterwards it will execute. So in that particular step, it will create a copy of this speak, and then when you call this speak like super speak, it will call that particular function within dog class only. It doesn't actually refer to this one. You can clearly see this if you try to extend the animal classes speak method with prototype, and if you call this dog classes instances speak method, you will be able to see that it is not being overridden. And there are like whole lot of things you can try out, but be careful when you are using super, because it doesn't work the way you expect it to work. Because like there are like whole lot of developers who have been using JavaScript prototypes for some time, and all of who really understand prototype, like if you think that okay, this is a one-to-one mapping and you can simply use it and be happy with it, it is not the case.
So we are moving to mixins. So in JavaScript,
What is a mixin?
mixins actually, yeah.
Before going into details of this topic, have you all heard of mixins?
JavaScript mixins,
Not even JavaScript.
any CSS or whatever.
Any other languages? Do you all know what multiple inheritance is?
So if the language level APIs are not supported for multiple inheritance, what we are going to do?
In Java, can we do multiple inheritance? Can we implement a way of doing such? Have you ever like thought about that? Like, is it beneficial to have multiple inheritance in the first place?
It's going to make lots of conflicts.
Confusions and conflicts.
Yeah.
But then again, like say you have a use case and like I don't know, like if you come across a use case, like you will be able to create some approach, right? So that approach is called mixing.
Yeah. So, but not like Java. In JavaScript, it's like very straightforward because it's
Reflection is available out of the box in JavaScript, so
yeah,
it's really simple.
really simple. So actually, we are creating a class called user, and we want to add some functions saying like say hi and say bye to that class. So of course we can implement inside the user, but let's say we have like 3 or 4 classes, but we want to add those say hi and say bye to those classes. So and let's say those classes are inherit from another base classes. base class. So this is the way we are going to add those behaviors to the class. Actually, mixins is not a inheritance or kind of things. Uh, Actually, mixings is something like if we want to add some behaviors to the class, we are use mixings. It's not an inheritance. We don't say it's inheritance, but if you want to say some if you want to say some behaviors like toString kind of things, so we are using mixings in JavaScript to add those things.
So it's somewhat like say if you have some common logic in a base class, say you have 5 base classes and you want to inherit from all 5 base classes in one of the child classes and have all those functionalities in inheritance terms. Think of the same thing in a manner where you have 5 sets of functionalities which are common, and those are just functions or like some kind of like just functions where you can call them with some context and get the output or do something. So all those behaviors, if you want to mix all of them and create uh, all those behaviors within the child class, then what you can simply do is you can simply implement all of those same thing, like whatever the things you have in the child class, right? You can simply write all those methods. Or otherwise, what you can do is you can simply write all those stubs without duplicating all those methods. You can create all those stubs as parent classes, and you can get all those methods out of those parent classes and copy them to the child class as a reference, where you can simply call the parent method and be good with it. You are not actually extending, but you are copying the behaviors. This emulates multiple inheritance because we don't have such here, and like you can do whole lot of things with it, like really powerful things if you are building libraries and whatnot.
This is some kind of another example of mixings.
And
May go previous slide.
Yeah, sure.
Now, if you have two methods with the same name, right? So, let's say now the first say hi mixing has say hi and say by two methods.
Yeah.
Another object has two methods which has say hi and say by
Yeah.
with two different implementations. When you're going to copy those methods to user, which method is going to
last
actually
version copied will replace all the other things.
Yeah.
So that we have to do, right? Otherwise, like this is not inheritance. This is a way of emulating something like that. So think of it like, okay, you have some kind of a method where in the runtime or when you are executing, you want to add it to all the classes what you have dynamically. There are certain cases when you are implementing libraries. So in that case, you can simply do it with that Mixin. And one more thing. So if you notice user.prototype, like this is a class, right? So how can it have a prototype? So same concept. Even though you use nice syntax, it again refers back to prototype. And okay, go to the next slide. And this syntax, like if you can remember, what way is this? We simply have the class without a name. If you can remember earlier, we discussed about two approaches to declare a class, right? Class declaration and class expression. So, like, can you understand this syntax? Anyone who can explain?
At least the arrow function.
Okay, so without taking time, I will explain. So here we have a method. So this is a method, right? Like if you came to the earlier sessions, you all know that arrow functions are there. We don't have brackets here because there's only one argument. So the first argument is base, which is a class, and we are accepting that base class. And what we are going to return, like if we don't have a return statement and if we don't have curly braces, what it will return is what arrow function will return is the first statement, whatever statement we have. We have only one statement, right? Curly braces will start and end, and it has all the logic of the class, and this class will get returned, and whenever you call this calculate mixins function with a particular class. And here what we are using is class expression function, class expression approach, where we are creating anonymous class and extending it with base, which is the argument we got, which is a class. So we are extending an anonymous class with whatever the methods which we have in base class, and this particular anonymous class has calculate method. So what it does is calculate mixin. If you call it with a particular class name, it will at this calculate method and create a new class, brand new class, and give it to you. So say you have a class called parent calculator, and it has some logic to it. And if you want to add calculate method, what you have to do is you have to pass that parent calculator method, parent calculator class to this particular method. You can simply call this function, and when you call this, it will create a brand new anonymous class and extend it with base classes, whatever the methods. So base class, whatever the methods will be there, and calculate method again will be there. So this is the way of creating a mixin. So the nice thing is now here we have one other thing which does the same, one other function which does the same thing. And in the final line, what we are doing is we are creating a class called bar, and we are extending it with these two mixin methods. So this particular function we are calling calculator mixin. Before even that, if we consider it in the execution order, randomize mixin. So randomize mixin function will get called, and we are passing the base, right? So in this case, base is foo, which is a class which doesn't have any implementation, and randomize mixin will simply add randomize method to it. So we get an anonymous class which has randomized method in it now. And afterwards, we are going to execute calculator mixin. And what it does is, on top of that anonymous class which we created, that is the argument for calculate mixin, right? And it is going to add calculate method to that and create another anonymous class. So now in the anonymous class, we have calculate and randomize methods. And finally, that class is extending, bar is extended by that particular class. So when you call bar.calc, calc is there because we use this. So this is really powerful if you use it properly. This is the way of implementing a mixin with ES6 syntax. Some of you might not have got the actual idea of how it works. Don't worry, you won't have to use these kind of things straight up, and you won't ever come to use something like this at all in your development career, I would say. But keep in mind all the syntax, try to understand what all you can do. Then when you get a chance, when you get a problem which you want to solve, you know how to approach it.
At least keep in mind the concept of mixins.
Yeah.
Then so you can read and get a clear understanding about mixins. Right. So let's talk about the best practices and when to use. Actually, Johan mentions some of these. So, and if you are a Java developer, keep in mind Java and JavaScript are two different languages. Don't look at Java ES6, JavaScript ES6 classes same as Java classes. And this is very nice, and we can do everything. And don't do implementation with the mindset of Java. So it will be a real complicated, and it will give more difficult errors and more complex codes, because JavaScript and Java are two different languages and they are using two different paradigms actually. So JavaScript is not an object-oriented language. It's actually a object-driven language, right?
Yeah.
So don't use those very heavy object-oriented concepts in JavaScript. And same manners we are following and patterns we are following in Java. So, and don't think without classes, we can't organize the code. Is the other thing. So people might think like classes is the one and only way to organize the code, but this is not correct. So in JavaScript, we have so many different paradigms, different patterns to organize the code. So please look into this, then use this. But by the way, if you want to use classes, it's there. You can use, but keep in mind it will heavy your code. So and it depend what you are writing. Actually, are you writing a code with jQuery or with JS, and there you are going to use classes, it will be a huge problem. Like if you are writing a WordPress plugin or kind of thing, so they are using different paradigms and you are using classes. I don't know. It will be a huge conflict. So when you are building a single page application, actually in React or I think Angular is TypeScript, right? So React, the framework they are encouraging you to use classes. So anyway, you have to use classes, but
Yeah, the thing is, like when you think about it, it's straightforward, right? You have a component and you want to create multiple instances of it. So what is the use case? You want to create multiple instances of the same this thing. So yeah, use a class. That is fine. But in cases where you want to use some functionality and you are simply going to use it only once, then don't do
use
that.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, so always keep in mind, like think about your problem statement and think of a better solution. Don't try to adapt everything what you know and try to like come up with solution which just works, but try to come up with a scalable solution which is more performant.
Yeah. If you are using a function like it's returning a string kind of things, don't wrap up it with the class and creating objects and you are going to use it you using the function. So it will be really high when we come to the performance. So just in JavaScript, you can straight away you can create the function and you can access it. So please do it. Don't wrap up it with the class and create object, and by using object you don't going to access the methods. So or libraries or server side scripting also same. In the libraries, you may have used the both methods like classes and the like another pattern. So don't wrap up all the things inside the classes. So that's why we want to highlight.
Yeah. So classes are really cool. It's nice syntax, but it's a bit evil in a way. Uh, so really think about it before using. And again, classes itself. Now we will discuss about prototype and some other ways of creating objects out of a single blueprint. Uh, this particular manner, object-oriented way of representing things. We will discuss couple of more approaches. So with that, you will get a better understanding of how well you can emulate these things and how well you can adapt these patterns, object-oriented principles in this language, and try to get the best out of it and think of your problem statement and decide on which one to use and which one suits the most. Yeah.
Team session.
So, does any of you have questions for